Ja, jag går på steka in kött och äter det.
Ja, och då åt du köttet från henne också?
Va?
It's really hard for me to grip the fact that my dad actually ate from a human being. I remember feeling so sick to my stomach. It was just so disgusting, and I couldn't believe my dad had done that.
Welcome to Echoes of Crime. Today, we're taking an intensely personal and frankly often horrifying journey into a narrative centered on one of Sweden's most notorious murderers, a man infamously labeled by the media as the Skara Cannibal.
Yeah, it's a name that carries a lot of weight, a lot of immediate horror.
But our focus today isn't solely on the gruesome details of the crime itself, which are disturbing enough. It's really on the profound and lasting psychological damage inflicted upon those closest to the killer, specifically his own daughter, Jamie Lee.
Exactly. We're looking at decades of really inherited trauma. We're talking about intense psychological manipulation and this almost impossible search for truth, especially when the source of your reality, your own father, is, well, a monster.
It's one of the most challenging deep dives we've done, I think.
I'd agree. Our mission here really is to move beyond that sensational media name, the Skara Cannibal, and truly examine the devastation, that sort of echo effect on her life. We have excerpts from interviews with Jamie Lee, her personal reflections, and even a recorded confrontation she had with her father, Isakin. He was sentenced back in 2011 to forensic psychiatric care for the murder.
Forensic psychiatric care, not prison. That's a key point we'll come back to.
Definitely. And the question that just hangs over everything, the one that defines Jamie Lee's entire life, is this. Did her father ever truly love her? Or was she just another piece, maybe a necessary component in his really elaborate dark game?
That's the core psychological knot, isn't it, that we have to kind of hold on to as we go through this story. A father's love, but twisted, weaponized, used for control. I mean, when the identity you inherit is daughter of the Skara Cannibal, the man who committed murder, decapitation, cannibalism, where do you even start trying to separate yourself from his actions?
You almost can't, not easily. And to really get the depth of that confusion, that entanglement, we have to start right at the beginning. We need to look at those earliest years where Isakin meticulously, almost architecturally, constructed a reality specifically designed to trap his daughter.
Creating what, like a perfect storm?
Yeah, a perfect psychological storm, one that would ensure her loyalty, her bond to him, pretty much no matter what he did later on.
Okay, so the name Skara Cannibal, it evokes immediate recognition, certainly in Sweden, but even internationally. The crime itself, the brutal murder, the decapitation of his girlfriend, Hel, consuming parts of her body in the town of Skara, it's just extreme, calculated violence.
It really is. But the Isakin that young Jamie Lee knew, or at least the one he presented to her initially, was completely different, or maybe a highly convincing persona.
Right, there's this contrast.
A huge contrast. You have to remember, when Jamie Lee was a baby, Isakin was really young himself, maybe about 20. And she describes him not as this budding monster, but as the best dad.
The best dad.
Yeah. She remembers him always making her laugh, having this almost magical way of lifting her spirits if she was sad. And crucially, he hammered home this profound sense of singular importance. He was constantly telling her he didn't care about anyone or anything else in the world except her.
Wow. That's powerful conditioning right there.
It's classic early-stage psychological conditioning. You create this intense, exclusive bond. It's the foundation of what we now call trauma bonding. The child feels utterly unique, absolutely essential to this central figure, their parent. It elevates their relationship above everything else, above all external morality.
So he basically set himself up as the only source of unconditional acceptance she could rely on.
Pretty much.
But that world of acceptance, it wasn't exactly normal, was it? It was built on something much darker.
Absolutely. It was built on a bed of explicit darkness, starting very, very early in her childhood. She wasn't just loved, she was also exposed to really disturbing content.
Disturbing how?
Well, things that seem to be actively educational for him. Jamie describes being shown horror movies, films just saturated with blood, knives, violence. She called them killer movies.
As a young child.
Yes. And what's really fascinating and deeply disturbing is how Isakin engaged with this stuff. He wasn't just, passively watching for entertainment. She says he was invested. Like he was learning something.
Learning? Learning what? How to?
Well, that's the chilling implication, isn't it? Was it desensitization for Jamie? Absolutely. But was it also potentially an instructional guide for him? It feels like active study, not just viewing.
Okay, that's incredibly unsettling. And this wasn't happening in a vacuum. He created an environment to match this, right?
Yeah.
What was his apartment like?
She called it kind of odd, which, based on her description, feels like a massive understatement.
How so?
It was specifically curated, designed to create a very dark feeling. Imagine being a little kid, and your home has paintings and pictures of the devil.
He didn't hide them?
No, displayed proudly. And on top of that, he had a prominent knife collection. And an axe, just there. Tools of destruction, completely normalized within the home.
Okay, so the physical space itself is reinforcing this sense of dread of darkness.
Exactly. This deliberate physical environment was designed to confirm that the outside world was unstable, maybe dangerous, and that the darkness they shared, that was the primary reality.
And this setting then became the stage for even more direct psychological abuse. This is where the gaslighting really kicks in.
Oh, absolutely. Actively forcing Jamie to doubt her own perceptions, insisting that demons and spirits were watching her all the time.
How do you do that?
It was aggressive manipulation. He wasn't just telling her spooky stories, he was demanding her participation. In the dark, he'd command her, look harder, try harder, look, just look at the wall. Keep looking until you see something. He was forcing her young, incredibly suggestible mind to literally strain for evidence of the supernatural. He manufactured the fear.
And did she see things?
She says she did. Faces, movement, shadows twisting on the walls. I mean, who wouldn't under that kind of pressure? She started living in this state of constant hypervigilance.
Terrified in her own home.
Constantly. And when she begged him, make it stop, his response just sealed the deal. He told her, you're going to have to get used to it because they are always going to be there.
Oh my God.
That phrase is like a psychological handcuff. It tells this little girl the world is inherently unsafe, that only he truly understands the danger, and that trying to find safety outside of him is completely futile. He was systematically destroying her trust in her own senses.
And this seemed to peak during these chilling late-night games he played with her.
Yeah, this is pure psychological torture. It's designed to break that fundamental trust a child has in their caregiver, the person closest to them. She describes lying in bed, maybe finally feeling a bit safe with her, back to him, and he would suddenly drop this horrific question on her.
What did he ask?
He'd whisper, what would you do if you heard me calling your name from the kitchen right now?
Okay.
You would realize that someone else was laying behind you, like a demon or something.
No.
He forced her to internalize the idea that the threat wasn't outside the door, it wasn't even external, it was right there beside her, in her bed, wearing his face.
And we know from what Jamie Lee says, this wasn't just about scaring her for kicks. He told her why he was doing this.
Yes, he had an explicit goal. He repeatedly insisted that they, meaning him and Jamie, were angels sent from hell to earth.
Angels from hell.
Yes. And that Jamie would eventually be even more powerful than him. This is the narcissist, the strategist at work. He wasn't looking for a daughter in the conventional sense. He was looking for an heir, an apprentice.
She even says it herself, right? That he was trying to...
She articulates it perfectly. She says he was trying to shape me into exactly what he was, make me evil. He needed her complicity, her mirroring of his darkness to validate his own twisted identity.
Wow. Okay, so you have this foundation of intense bonding mixed with terrifying psychological abuse.
Yeah.
And then the veneer of the loving father finally cracks.
It shatters, definitively. During what Jamie calls the first snap, the pizza incident.
The pizza incident? What happened? She must have been tiny.
Around 5 years old.
Yeah.
And it was such an innocuous thing. She ate the topping off her pizza for, the cheese and ham, like kids do.
Yeah.
And that simple act triggered this monstrous, completely unpredictable reaction from Isakin.
What did he do?
He accused her of not really being hungry, and then he just snapped. Her description is harrowing. She said his eyes turned black, he lost all emotion. It was like, my dad wasn't there anymore, it was someone else.
Herself gone.
Completely. He smashed her plate in the sink, screaming, shouting, just pure, terrifying rage over pizza topping.
And her reaction? As a 5-year-old.
At her paralysis, she just froze, heart pounding, and she kept repeating, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, over and over.
But it didn't work.
Made no difference whatsoever. And that's key. The apology didn't work because the reaction wasn't about the pizza. It was about asserting total, unpredictable dominance. By being arbitrarily punished for something so small, Jamie learned 2 devastating lessons right then. 1, the monster inside him is real and can emerge any time. And 2, her only path back to safety is through frantic, continuous attempts to appease this unpredictable source of pain and fear.
So that volatility, that randomness,
Yeah.
it just cements the fear of the loyalty.
Exactly. It's textbook intermittent reinforcement, high affection 1 minute, terrifying violence the next. It ensures she'll keep seeking his approval, keep trying to get back to the good dad, even when logic, if she had it, would scream at her to run away. It set the baseline for everything that followed.
Okay, so the narrative takes a really significant turn then when Isakin meets Hell. Jamie was about 6 or 7 at this point.
That's right. Suddenly, there's this new figure in their very intense, very dark, insulated world. And Hell sounds quite striking. Bright red hair, makeup. Jamie describes her as so beautiful.
And Jamie liked her.
Immediately. She really loved her, felt Hell was like a second mom. For Jamie, this must have felt like a huge disruption, maybe even a potential positive one, to Isakin's world.
Like a glimpse of normalcy.
Perhaps. A momentary paradise, as Jamie put it. A maternal figure offering some relief from that constant psychological pressure from her father.
But given Isakin's nature, that paradise probably didn't last long.
Not at all. It dissolved very quickly. The sources describe a rapid deterioration into just extreme violent confrontations every single weekend.
Not just arguments.
No, these were visceral, destructive battles. Jamie recalls plates being thrown, constant screaming, and the verbal assaults. She mentions hearing them say disgusting things, sexual things to each other, things no child should ever hear.
And where was Jamie in all this?
Trying desperately to intervene. Remember, she's been conditioned to fear the monster and her father. She'd scream for them to stop, try to pull them apart, only to be pushed aside, ignored. She said she felt, for the first time since that early bonding, that she meant nothing to him during those fights.
That must have been terrifying, too, if her entire world revolved around being his special one.
It's critical. If she meant nothing, then that illusion of her special status, her protection within his dark world, was starting to crumble.
And the violence, it didn't just stay verbal or involve objects. It escalated.
It escalated to the point where the direct threat of murder was explicitly stated.
He threatened to kill Hell in front of Jamie.
Yes. She vividly remembers hearing her father scream at Hell, "I will kill you."
Oh, God.
Jamie said her heart just dropped because she'd been so rigorously trained to believe in his inherent evil, and she'd witnessed his volcanic rage firsthand. This wasn't just an empty threat blowing off steam.
She believed him.
She absolutely believed him. It felt like a promise. She genuinely believed it was just a question of time before he murdered Hell.
Can you imagine the psychological weight on a child? Living with the certainty that a murder is about to happen in your home.
It's unfathomable. She described sitting there just thinking any time now he would get a knife and he would kill her, just waiting for it.
And that waiting, that dread, it all culminated in the final terrifying weekend she spent with him.
Yeah, the atmosphere was just heavy, a suffocating tension that signaled something was about to break.
How does she describe it?
Hell was clearly distressed, stressed out, slamming doors, cooking very aggressively, and Isakin was equally coiled, tensed, and like he was angry. Jamie just had this clear, terrible certainty that that day wouldn't end up good.
The hyper-awareness again.
It's a side effect of living with intermittent violence. You become acutely attuned to the slightest shift in mood, the tiny signals that precede a major explosion.
And then came that chilling moment at the dinner table. The prophecy?
Yeah. Hell served dinner. She looked directly at young Jamie and she said, "Enjoy your meal. This is the last thing I will ever cook for you because Isakin is going to kill me."
She said that to a child.
To Jamie. Imagine the absolute terror and the awful confirmation for Jamie. She just froze. The premonition she'd been carrying, terrified about for months, was now being verbalized by the intended victim herself. It confirmed everything. "I knew what was coming," she said. She felt like a witness, helpless to stop what she knew was inevitable.
And the news came shortly after that weekend.
Yes. Jamie's mother delivered the news, weeping. She told Jamie that Hell was dead, but she refused, understandably, to give the details of the brutality. Tried to shield her.
But you can't really shield someone from something like this forever, especially with the media involved.
Exactly. That parental protection, though well-intentioned, only lasted so long. Jamie learned Hell was dead and that the manner of the killing was very brutal. The real breaking point, the moment the full horror crashed in, came when the gruesome details were just forced upon her by the media.
How did she find out?
She accidentally saw a newspaper headline. It read, Isakin Skara Cannibal. Just seeing that name, Skara Cannibal, attaching the act of cannibalism to her father and even the town itself, it instantly sickened her. She felt sick to my stomach.
And the cannibalism part specifically.
That was incredibly difficult for her to grasp. She notes how it was an act so far beyond human comprehension, so monstrous, it just broke her ability to reconcile the dad she knew with the man who could do that.
And the reaction from society, from her peers, the community.
Immediate and defining. Her life changed instantly. Everyone who knew her, everyone at school, they just saw her differently. Her own identity was basically stripped away and replaced with shame and association.
She must have felt incredibly alone.
Profoundly isolated. She says she felt like the most lonely girl in the world. Nobody could relate. Nobody wanted to get close to the daughter of that monster. In her words, no one really saw me for me anymore. I was just the Skara Cannibal's daughter.
So in a twisted way, his crime achieved what he'd always seemed to want.
It isolated her completely from the outside world. It reinforced that dark bubble, leaving him eventually as the only one who might possibly understand or accept her shattered reality. It fulfilled his original goal.
Okay, so fast forward 2 years. Isakin has been sentenced to forensic psychiatric care. Jamie Lee's a bit older now, maybe early teens.
Around that time, yes.
And she decides to see him. After 2 years of hearing him called monster, cannibal, reading those headlines, the anticipation must have been immense, terrifying.
She describes being so nervous, completely expecting to walk in and see some kind of grotesque figure, a visible monster embodying the crimes.
But that's not what happened.
Not at all. What she got was complete psychological dissonance. Isakin walked out, smiling, called her my little angel, hugged her tightly. He was, in her words, just the same. Just my dad.
Wow. The lack of visible change.
That's profoundly confusing for any victim, especially a child. The fact that the man who committed those absolutely unspeakable acts looked, acted, sounded entirely normal, entirely like the father she remembered, it messes with your head completely.
And this reunion, this dissonance, it led to a really pivotal decision for her, didn't it? One that shaped years of her life.
It really did. It's the nexus of her ongoing trauma in many ways. She made a conscious choice. She decided to accept what he had done. Why? In her words, to get my dad back.
To get her dad back, even knowing what he did.
This is trauma bonding fully realized. She consciously, deliberately sacrificed the memory of hell, the victim, the woman she loved like a second mother. She sacrificed that truth to reclaim the unconditional love and acceptance she'd been conditioned since birth to crave from him.
Because he was the only one left who might accept her.
When you are that isolated, defined by the world by this horrific shame, the one person who seems to accept your shame, even if, or especially if, they caused it, they become a lifeline. A deeply toxic lifeline, but a lifeline nonetheless.
But getting her dad back, accepting his version, it didn't bring peace or stability, did it? It led somewhere much darker for her personally.
No, it led to what she describes as a complete nightmare throughout her teenage years. Around age 13 or 14, she just spiraled.
How so? Severe self-hatred. Drug use started, heavy drinking. She genuinely believed she was trash. She was convinced everyone expected her to end up homeless, worthless, just like her father, in a way.
And this self-hatred, was it connected to his earlier conditioning?
Directly. She had internalized that belief he'd fed her, that they were inherently dark, maybe evil. And now she was acting out that terrible prophecy.
And what was his response to her spiraling? Did he try to stop her?
This is crucial. Isakin was the only one who didn't judge her destructive behavior. He actually allowed her to visit him in the psychiatric hospital while she was high on drugs.
He allowed that.
Yes. This is the master manipulator, the narcissistic strategist, leveraging her absolute vulnerability. He wasn't offering help. He was offering validation for her destruction.
And Jamie Lee herself believes he was actually happy that everyone else was neglecting her, pushing her away. Absolutely. Her isolation was his golden opportunity. It allowed him to reinforce that narrative he'd built from the start. It's me and him against the world. He provided her with unconditional acceptance precisely because she was self-destructing. Her misery validated his success in molding her, and it secured his narcissistic supply. He needed her broken.
So he wasn't just passively accepting her, he was actively encouraging this descent.
Oh, completely. He wasn't just saying, I accept you as you are. He was actively teaching her, reinforcing the darkness, claiming they were supernatural, teaching her how to control other people, how to have no empathy.
Framing darkness as power again.
Exactly. Reframing moral depravity as some kind of sophisticated control. And to maintain this delusion, to make it feel real, he even introduced physical tools of manipulation.
Physical tools.
This detail is just chilling. He gave Jamie a voodoo doll, one that he had made himself, and a needle.
A voodoo doll? What did he tell her to do with it?
He instructed her that if anyone hurt her, emotionally or otherwise, she should push the needle into the doll. And that person, wherever they were, would feel physical pain exactly where the needle entered the doll.
Oh my God. That's teaching magical thinking as a weapon.
It's a powerful act of symbolic violence, and it's about transference of responsibility. He was teaching her she could inflict pain without consequence, bypassing any sense of morality or guilt. Just pure, detached power.
And did this empower her? Did it work in the way he intended?
It certainly empowered her destructive tendencies. It led her down a truly frightening path. She reached a point where she told her best friend that before she died, she wanted to try to kill someone.
Kill someone.
Just to know what it felt like. That shows you how profoundly successful his project to make me evil, as she put it, had become. He had almost gotten her there.
This is incredibly dark. And the absolute lowest point, the nadir of this self-destruction, came when she was suicidal.
Yes. She describes being at the lowest point ever, genuinely wanting to end her life. And in that moment of absolute desperation, who did she turn to for help?
Her father.
Her father,
Yeah.
the architect of her pain. And his response wasn't comfort or professional help. It was something else entirely.
What did he do?
He told her he had the solution, a ritual. He promised this ritual would change her life for good, solve all her problems, bring her success, power, happiness, everything she craved.
A ritual, what kind?
It was the perfect false promise for a deeply depressed, heavily conditioned teenager completely under his spell. He had her close her eyes, take his hands, and repeat words after him. Words that she later realized essentially sold my soul to the devil. It was to Lucifer.
He had her perform a soul-selling ritual.
He did, and the psychological trauma, the impact on her was instantaneous and visceral.
How did she feel afterwards?
She describes feeling like she had no soul, like she was just floating in darkness. She was convinced her life was ruined for real now. Utterly terrified of the spiritual consequence, she felt she couldn't even go through with suicide anymore. She was trapped.
And Isakin's reaction to her terror, to her feeling soulless.
He was proud. He told her he was 100% certain I helped you.
Drow.
This ritual, for him, was the final lock on the psychological cage he'd built around her. It bound her to his dark identity through this manufactured, terrifying spiritual contract. He successfully took her desperate cry for help and twisted it into an act of deeper submission to him and his darkness.
Okay, so moving forward again. 6 years after that horrifying ritual, Isakin decides that Jamie is now, in his eyes, really ready.
Ready for what?
Ready to hear how the murder actually happened, his full account.
Wow. After all that time, after everything he'd put her through, this confrontation feels like the ultimate stage for his manipulation.
Designed to do what? Absolve himself somehow.
Absolve himself while tightening his grip. That seems to be the pattern. He started by framing Hel, the victim, as the catalyst, portraying her as desperate, suicidal.
How did he frame it?
He claimed she had begged him to kill her every single day since they met, that she'd tried suicide many times before, unsuccessfully, that she essentially forced his hand because he just couldn't get rid of her.
So he presented the murder as, what, an act of compassion? A mercy killing?
Essentially, yes. A terrible act forced upon him by her desperation.
And the ultimate justification. The reason he believed Jamie had to accept this narrative, why it was okay.
This is the most manipulative twist. He told her, I did it for you, Jamie. I did all of it for you.
For her? How could he possibly justify that?
By claiming the murder was a necessity, that he had to eliminate Hel as an obstacle so he could return his singular focus to Jamie. He tried to redefine this barbaric crime as the ultimate twisted act of paternal love and protection.
That's just weaponizing the trauma bond all over again. Suggesting her safety, her importance, hinges on accepting his crime as somehow selfless.
Precisely.
And then he described the act itself. In detail.
In excruciating detail.
What was his demeanor like while telling his daughter this?
This is incredibly telling. Jamie's observation was that he was reliving it. that he seemed to be enjoying talking about it.
Enjoying it.
Yes, and that he was proud of it, like he was holding a painting that he had done.
Like an artistic accomplishment.
Yeah.
Not a confession of a horrific act born of desperation.
Exactly. This wasn't the recounting of a tragic loss of control, like his initial framing suggested. This was the performance, the proud display of his masterpiece.
Okay, and this brings us right to the core of his defense, his explanation for why it was so brutal. The calculated insanity plea.
Right. He didn't just confess the acts. He gave a specific, cold, calculated reason for why he did those extreme things.
What was his reason?
He asserted that the extreme, almost theatrical nature of the crime was entirely rational, entirely strategic. He stated, point blank, I did it in such a brutal way so that I wouldn't go to prison, so that I would go to this hospital instead.
Okay, let's pause on that. For listeners maybe not familiar with the Swedish system, why would psychiatric care be preferable to a standard prison sentence for him?
It's a crucial distinction. In Sweden, forensic psychiatric care offers a significantly different outcome compared to prison. A prison sentence usually carries a definite term, 10 years, 20 years, life with possibility of parole eventually. Forensic care, however, is often indefinite.
Yeah.
It can be perceived as potentially harsher because there's no set release date, but it also carries significant benefits, especially for someone like Isakin.
Such as?
Well, he avoids the stigma and the much harsher physical reality of a maximum security prison environment. But perhaps more importantly, it secures him the official label of insane.
No protective status.
In a way, he told Jamie he committed those atrocities specifically to prove to them that you were crazy. And so they will never question if I am insane or not. He essentially weaponized the horror of his own actions to secure a specific, calculated legal outcome and identity.
So he used the cannibalism, the decapitation, the desecration as, performative evidence for the diagnosis he wanted.
That seems to be his claim. It's a way to bypass true responsibility. If you're legally insane, the thinking goes, you're not fully culpable in the same way.
But Jamie, listening to this, she introduces a flaw in his perfect calculation, doesn't she? A memory that casts doubt on this purely strategic motive.
Yes, and it completely undermines his carefully constructed narrative. She recalls him telling her mother, years before the murder even happened, that he always wondered what human flesh tastes like.
He said that years before.
That's Jamie's recollection. And if that's true, it suggests his actions weren't purely tactical, purely about getting into the hospital.
Right. If the goal was just the hospital, a less baroque murder probably would have sufficed for an insanity plea.
Exactly. The extreme nature, the cannibalism, the things he apparently fantasized about beforehand, it suggests he might have used the calculated plea as the perfect cover, a way to live out his fantasies, as Jamie puts it, transforming the crime scene into his own private, self-directed horror show, knowing the brutality would help him avoid prison.
That's a terrifying thought that the insanity plea itself was part of the fantasy fulfillment.
It adds another layer of calculated horror.
So after hearing all this, years of manipulation culminating in this grotesque confession and explanation, what was the final breaking point for Jamie, the moment the bond finally snapped?
It happened during a later discussion, not about the murder itself, but about some minor disagreement they'd had the week before. Jamie was trying to hold him accountable, trying to assert a boundary, a small sign of her maybe emerging independence.
And how did he react to being challenged, even slightly?
His control just shattered. Instantly. His eyes, she said, turned black again, just like they had during the pizza incident all those decades earlier. The monster resurfaced.
And he became threatening.
He walked toward her, very threatening, and screamed at her, "Shut your mouth or you will see what happens."
A direct threat, life-threatening, potentially.
Absolutely. And for Jamie, that was the moment of absolute terrifying clarity. The trauma bond, the years of confusion and forced loyalty, it just shattered in that instant. She realized right then, looking at him, that she was not different than hell. That same unpredictable, murderous rage that had taken his girlfriend's life was now being pointed directly at her, his daughter, simply for questioning him.
That was it.
That was the last time she saw him. She walked away. She had to, she said, to finally escape the darkness he had spent her entire life imposing on her.
Did she find any closure after cutting contact? Or is it still unresolved?
She found one small, specific shred of closure, apparently. He eventually apologized, maybe in writing or through a third party, specifically for the childhood trauma, the gaslighting, the conditioning, the fear he instilled, things he had always denied before.
An apology for the childhood, but not the murder itself.
That seems to be the distinction. But even that apology is contaminated for her by the deep, lingering fear and doubt.
Because she can't trust his sincerity.
Exactly. Because, as she points out, he's a master manipulator. He knows how to behave like a normal person. He knows how you're supposed to act. He's a psychological architect who can mimic genuine emotion perfectly when it suits him. She concludes that without being able to see inside his head, she can never truly know if that apology or his whole explanation for the crime, his motives, any of it is sincere. He leaves her trapped in this perpetual state of ambiguity.
And that ambiguity, that doubt, it continues to haunt her, even now.
It seems so. She admits, very painfully, that she still misses the good parts of their relationship, the memory of the best dad from her early childhood, perhaps. She says she is still debating whether she could ever let him back into her life in any capacity, even as she simultaneously fears he would just infect her or her future children with his darkness.
And her final assessment of him, of his potential for future violence.
It's terrifyingly clear. Based on her intimate, lifelong knowledge of him, she believes he is absolutely capable of killing again if someone gives him a reason to.
That's not just a fear, that's an assessment.
It's her assessment of his fundamental character. It confirms that the calculated control, the performance of normalcy, is just a fragile layer over this profound, violent instability that could erupt again. #tag outro.
Wow, the Skara Cannibal case, particularly through Jamie Lee's eyes, it just forces us, and certainly forces her, to confront these incredibly fundamental questions about truth, reality, motive.
It really does. I think the most terrifying aspect isn't just the murder itself, as horrific as that was. It's the constant, aggressive, lifelong erosion of reality that Isaac had inflicted. He actively gaslights not just his daughter, but potentially the entire legal system, the public. He insists that his carefully constructed narrative is the only reality, the only truth worth believing.
And anyone who believes the official reports, the evidence.
He dismisses them as an idiot. It's a profound study in narcissistic strategy. Control the narrative, dismiss all contradictory evidence, attack the credibility of anyone who questions you.
So Jamie Lee is left with this unbearable question. Was that intense possessive bond her father cultivated, that feeling of being his special one, was it ever real? Or was it just the most complex, long-running component of his dark game?
And that leads us to the final takeaway question for you, the listener. In a narrative where a killer commits acts of almost unbelievable savagery, we're talking cannibalism, decapitation, desecration, but claims he did it with the explicit calculated goal of securing a specific outcome, forensic psychiatric care.
Does that cold calculation make the crime seem less insane? Or does it actually make it profoundly, terrifyingly more disturbing, that the horror itself was just a tool?
It's a deeply unsettling question, and maybe a provocative thought to leave you with. This case just starkly highlights the overwhelming burden of inherited trauma, where a victim, like Jamie, must not only survive the direct acts of a monster, but must then spend decades fighting the insidious possibility that that monster might still be the only person who ever truly offered them a twisted form of acceptance.
What is the true cost of knowledge, the true cost of searching for truth, when the answers, the motives, the entire fabric of your life have been intentionally, expertly twisted by a master manipulator who knows exactly how to play the role of the devoted father, even while recounting unspeakable horrors?
That, perhaps, is the enduring darkness Jamie Lee must continue to navigate every single day.